Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point. The network is AFR Talk. Just some other immigration. I want to play one more Raul Labrador soundbite for you from his interview with David Gregory on Meet the Press. But according to the CBO, you know what the other side has been telling us, Marco Rubio, in pushing his permanent Democratic majority amnesty bill, has been arguing that this is going to be good for the economy. Here is a piece from CNS News reporting on a CBO estimate. Here's how it begins. Depressed wages and a labor market filled with a large influx of new legal residents without a high school education could be the future under immigration reform, according to the Congressional Budget Office estimates issued within a month of each other. Now I'm going to go through the details here with you because it's pretty obvious what will happen. This is going to lower wages because what you have is you have a flood of low-skilled, poorly educated workers coming into the system. And that's where our unemployment problem is the worst. I got a story in the stack here that unemployment among black youths right now, teenagers, is at 95%. I repeat, unemployment today, right now, as you and I are talking, among black teenagers, 15, 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, is at 95%. This is absolutely, totally, completely unacceptable. This is the Obama recovery. Who's getting hurt? It's minority youth. It ought to break our hearts. They just don't have an opportunity. So they're going to wind up getting in trouble, in part, I'm not saying exclusively because of this, but in part because they have no useful thing to do with their time and energy. They've dropped out of school, or they flunked out or whatever, and they've got nothing useful to do with their time, and there are just simply no jobs out there. So who's going to be impacted? The 5% of black teenagers that have jobs right now, they're going to lose those jobs to these newly legalized prior illegal immigrants who come into the country and take their jobs because they're willing to work for less money. So you're going to have a labor market that's flooded with people who do not have high school education. Remember, the typical illegal alien, according to the study the Heritage Foundation did, has a 10th grade education. The average illegal alien that would be legalized under the Senate program, the Marco Rubio Permanent Democratic Majority Amnesty Bill, has a 10th grade education and will be in the system for 34 years. And the Heritage Foundation indicated that the average worker with a 10th grade education is going to wind up consuming, over the course of those 34 years, $592,000 more in welfare benefits than he contributes to the economy. Every one of those legalized illegal aliens is going to be a net drain on the American taxpayer to the tune of $600,000, and a total impact on the American taxpayer and the national debt of $6.3 trillion. Now, the Senate kind of tuned up their bill, but it's meaningless. According to the CBO, that's going to cost $39 billion more than the old bill, and it's only going to boost border security by 8%. That under the previous bill, the Marco Rubio Permanent Democratic Majority Amnesty Bill, illegal immigration was only going to be reduced by 25%. Under this new and improved bill, it's going to be reduced by 33%. So that means that illegal immigration is going to continue at 67% of the pace we're currently seeing. And this is after we have legalized 11 or 12 million people. It's just a complete non-starter. Then you've got this story we heard about where a police chief in Mexico was killed with one of the weapons that Barack Obama and Eric Holder made sure got across the border, illegal guns into the hands of Mexican drug cartels. Here's how the story goes. Newsmax, a high-powered rifle lost in the Justice Department's bungled gun-running Operation Fast and Furious, was used to kill 2 people in Mexico, including a police chief in January. So the total casualty count now is up to 211. The people that have been killed or wounded with guns that President Obama and Eric Holder illegally trafficked into Mexico. They wound up in the hands of drug cartels, and they're not only being used now to kill our own Border Patrol agents, our own law enforcement officials, but law enforcement officials in Mexico. The disclosure of the death of Luis Lucio Rosales Estorga, the police chief in the city of Hastotapaquillo in the state of Jalisco, suggests that fast and furious weapons are now in the hands of violent drug cartels deep within Mexico. 2,000 guns were run into Mexico, illegal guns run by Eric Holder. They lost track of virtually all of them. At least 1,500 of them. They have no idea where they wound up. And now one of them has surfaced in the death of a police chief. A semi-automatic rifle was used on him. Now, here's a story. Washington Times, Stephen Dinan, immigrants, both legal and illegal, have accounted for all of the job gains in the U.S. labor market since 2000. The Center for Immigration Studies report says 22.4 million immigrants of working age held jobs at the beginning of this year, up 5.3 million over the total in 2000. Native-born workers with jobs dropped 1.3 million over the same period. Meanwhile, the number of Americans who aren't in the labor force at all has jumped by almost 13 million to reach 48.6 million. So the point here he's making, look, native-born Americans lost 1.3 million jobs since 2000. Immigrants, which includes legal and illegal, have picked up 5.3 million jobs. So all of the job gains have come at the expense of native-born Americans. That's the point. It's immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, their employment is up 5.4 million, while native-born jobs employment down 1.3 million. So obviously, immigration, legal and illegal, taking jobs away from American workers. Now, here's a story from CNS News, again, touching on the immigration issue, why we need to seal up the borders. The Internal Revenue Service, listen to this, sent 23,994 tax refunds, 23,994 tax refunds with a combined total of $46,378,040 to unauthorized alien workers who all used the same address in Atlanta, Georgia in 2011. This according to a report by the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. That was not the only Atlanta address theoretically used by thousands of unauthorized alien workers receiving millions in federal tax refunds in 2011. In fact, according to an Inspector General audit report published last year, 4 of the top 10 addresses to which IRS sent thousands of tax refunds to unauthorized aliens were in Atlanta. The IRS sent 11,284 refunds worth over $2 million to a second Atlanta address, 3,600 refunds worth $2.7 million to a third, and 2,400 tax refunds worth $1.2 million to a fourth. So you got 4 addresses in Atlanta, Georgia, and one of them, one address alone, they sent 24,000 tax refunds, 23,994 tax refunds to the same address. $46 million, ladies and gentlemen. That's your tax money. That's my tax money. Money we worked for. We worked hard for that. We paid our taxes. We paid them on time. We paid what we owed. $46 million of that been siphoned off to people that don't even have the legal right to be in the United States. $46 million going to one single solitary address. Just one example of the kind of fraud that accompanies this whole illegal immigration debacle. You know, and it's worth remembering, regardless of what our immigration policies are in Mexico, man, they are tougher than nails. And maybe I'll have a chance to review some of their immigration policies with you. You can't become a burden on the taxpayer down there. If you're a foreigner, even if you're a legal immigrant, you can never, ever participate in the political system down there in Mexico, even as a voter. Now, let's go to clip 8. This is Raul Labrador, my friend from Idaho, talking here with David Gregory and David Brooks, who is a writer for the New York Times. And David Brooks says, I've seen a lot of intellectually weak cases in this town. I have rarely seen as intellectually as weak a case as is the case against the Senate immigration bill. So he says this case against the Senate immigration bill that Raul Labrador was making is weak intellectually. In other words, it's a polite way of saying the people that are pushing this are stupid and ignorant. And Raul Labrador, who's a pretty smart fella, took vigorous exception to that, and David Gregory asked him, Congressman, respond to David Brooks. Here's what Raul Labrador had to say.
I'm sorry, but what I just heard was totally ridiculous. If you listen to what the CBO said, they said that it's going to be between a third and 50% reduction in illegal immigration. That means that every 5 years we're going to have to do another Reagan amnesty. What the American people want is a secure border. They understand that there is going to be economic growth, and I agree that there's going to be economic growth when you have immigration reform. That's why I'm a big proponent of immigration reform. But for somebody to sit here on national TV and say that it is actually a weak argument for us to argue that we want something like 90% security, I think it's actually beyond the pale. What we need to do, look at just one thing. There's two components of the law that we need to change. For example, the ICE agents have told us that if they could work with the local communities, with the local law enforcement agents, they would be much more effective in securing our interior. The Democrats do not want any local enforcement of immigration laws. We do it with drug laws. We do it with all these other things that where we have these task forces between the federal and state and local agencies. And the Democrats do not want to do it with immigration. We could do that, and we could curtail a lot of the illegal immigration. There's a lot of other things that we can do to make this law stronger.
David, respond to that.
The CBO said that it would reduce it by a third to 50%. And what I hear the congressman saying is he won't support it unless it's 100% because we'd have to go back and do a Reagan.
That's not what I say. Don't put words in my mouth.
So Raul Labrador fighting fire with fire. You know, his figure was 90%. We need 90% security. But listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. What they got with a fence was 99% border security. In fact, what Benjamin Netanyahu said, with a fence, we have shut down illegal immigration. We have closed off our southern border to Muslim immigrants from Africa. And we have closed off our border to terrorists who want to come across our southern border and do us harm. So bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, no fence, no deal. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back with more. Stay with us. You want to join the program, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840.